Attend Autocon 2 in Denver, November 20th through 22nd, 2024. You'll hear presentations about network automation from hands-on engineers who build automation systems for their company and have the scars to prove it. Conference pricing is not high, but this is a boutique event with limited tickets. Go to networkautomation.forum/Autocon2 to register today.
Welcome to Total Network Operations, the podcast dedicated to hardworking network operators like you who deliver all the packets. Here on the TNOps podcast, we address org and process issues, the evolving NetOps tech stack, vendor solutions geared for operations, and how it all needs to work together. Our goal is to shine a bright light on best practices in NetOps so you can take away useful ideas and make informed decisions for your network. I'm Scott Robon. Our guest today is Garrett Nowak, a senior director of network architecture with 1111 Systems. I've had the great pleasure of getting to know Garrett, and I've been really impressed with the issues he's driving in network automation and operations overall, along with a lot of wisdom he's acquired along the way. Garrett, great to have you here today. Tell us more about yourself and your journey into NetOps.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. I'm fairly new to the scene, so I've been in my career for about 12 years now. I started as tier one help desk, just like imaging laptops and fixing printers. I moved on to NetOps and network architecture. And then now, like you said, I'm a director. So I recently started stepping out and reaching out to the community and meeting people like you. And I've been enjoying it so far. So here I am.
It looks like you're enjoying it. Seeing you through Network Automation Forum and the first presentation you gave in 2023 was just great. And I think I screwed up some of your slide transitions. I'm still very sorry for that.
It's okay. It was a lot of fun.
It really was. I think it was a lot of fun for everybody who heard it too. Well, look, tell us about your superhero origin story, or if you care to, if it's a super villain story, you can cast it that way if you'd like. But tell us how you got here from A to B.
Depends on who tells the story, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So I just grew up in the middle of nowhere. I didn't come from much. There were a couple of years where I lived with my grandma. Shout out to my grandma. Went to college on a ton of student loans that were in my name, and was just kind of trying to make it through everything, I guess. Survival mode. It's kind of like that grind life, I guess. I think my career kind of kicks off there at the end of college. So I had a student internship in my senior year of college, and so that ends when you graduate and you are no longer a student. So I had been trying to set up something for when that happened, and I wasn't getting anywhere with it, and so I graduated. I was immediately out of a job. My housing was tied to being a student, so I was out of housing. I was just slumming it on my girlfriend's couch. She's my wife now. I was just slumming it on her couch, begging people for interviews. And one day, a couple months after I graduated, I saw a guy I graduated with. He posted about getting a new job. So I had, sent him a message, and I was just begging him, like, dude, I got to get an interview. I'm desperate. I'll do anything. Just get me in the door. And I ended up getting that interview. It was a really short interview. I choked so hard during the interview. They asked me a single technical question. I was fresh out of college. I didn't have any experience, and they just asked me a single technical question, and it was, what is a firewall? And man, I choked so hard. I just said I didn't know, and I thought that was the end of it. And ended up kind of hitting it off with the guy who would be my manager, and I had a follow-up interview like right after that with the owners of the company. It was a really small company, and they said, the manager liked me and they'd be in touch. And I took a shot, and I just said, well, if you like me, it was a Friday. So I said, if you like me, I'll start Monday. I'll be here Monday morning early. I'll do whatever you want me to do. And they, took a flyer on me, I guess. They said, yeah, show up Monday and let's do it. And so, that's how I kind of got started. Like I said, I was doing tier one help desk stuff. So I just showed up and said, hey, what do you want me to do? And they said, oh, we got some new employees starting. I was like one of maybe 3 or 4 employees starting that day. And so I just set up their laptops, and we just kind of went from there. It was I didn't have any experience, so anything I could do was going to give me experience, right? And that was kind of my mentality. It's kind of how I've been my entire life growing up, was just, like I said, it was that grind life, right? So
Right.
I wanted to make myself useful, and I've just held on to that for 12 years, really.
You said you've talked before about being really annoying to, was that your first boss? What were you annoying about? What did that look like?
Yeah, that was Jeff. Jeff will probably listen to this, so hey, Jeff. He was my network engineering mentor. So at the time, there were 3 guys in the knock plus Jeff. He was the guy that ran the network at the company. And during those first few months or so, Jeff always was seen as like the guy that did all the cool stuff. And so I would float on over to his desk in the back of the knock and stand over his shoulder and just kind of like take notes on what he was doing. And, some days it looked like he was in the Matrix. And I just thought it was so cool, all the command line stuff going on. And I ended up bugging him every day, like, hey, Jeff, what are you doing? What is that? What was that? And I would take notes. And eventually, after telling me to go away, I don't know how long it was, weeks maybe, he told me to go away every day. But eventually he said, all right, pull up a chair, I'll teach you. And so he kind of started me down the network path. I loved it. It was so cool to be doing ones and zeros and packets and things like that. And
That's right, man.
eventually I kind of wormed my way in there. I say, Jeff, send me your configs. You need a QA, send it over to me. And so I would hold on to the configs, and I would learn off of the configs and use them as templates. And that, it just kind of grew from there, right? Like once I knew what, a certain deployment was supposed to look like, and I had a template for it, then all of a sudden I could do that. And I just kind of like built up that library. And then Jeff ended up moving on to another job outside of the company. And who knew the most about the network after Jeff? It was Garrett, who was bugging Jeff for all his notes. And that's how I became the network guy. And I kind of built myself off of like, I'm the guy. That was what I used to tell myself to build confidence, because I always thought I was in a fake it till you make it scenario, right? I really was. That was the definition of fake it till you make it, if you're asking me. But yeah, I kind of just propped myself up on I'm the guy, and ended up making my way through NetOps and, like I said, network architecture, and then to where I am today.
Well, you gave me an example of hitting a point where, to put it in the terms that we've talked about it previously, you became the network cowboy, right? And here you are hoarding configs. Maybe you became the source of truth for the network. That's another conversation. But you ended up in a pretty bad situation in a data center at 2 a.m. where what did you realize there, Garrett?
Yeah, my team loves this story, by the way. They'll listen to it 100 times because they just love this picture. So yeah, at the time, I was definitely in hero mentality because, I thought that was like job security, right? Like if I'm the network guy, they need me. And so, it was a toxic feedback loop. But yeah, in this specific scenario, I was in a data center in Virginia. The project was to replace our core routers. And I was having a really hard time doing it. This was the first time I had ever done a project like this, and it was just me, nobody else with me. Our office was in Houston, so it's not like I could have anybody come out real quick and help. And yeah, like 2 a.m. in the morning, I had had enough. I couldn't figure it out. I was sitting on the floor at the data center crying to myself, just like I just felt so helpless. And
Wow.
That was like a really low point for me of like, it ended up turning into, hey, maybe I do need help. But at the time it was a real eye opener of like, maybe I'm not the guy. maybe this isn't the right thing for me. But I ended up taking a deep breath and getting past it. But yeah, that was a real eye opener for me.
I think you're not alone. Maybe you're just willing to be really transparent about it, right? But a lot of us show up and just put in the hours, and we work ourselves into a corner or a hole, right? Pick your favorite analogy there. But you've been able to run with that. And again, the story you just told in the grand scheme of things wasn't that long ago, right? You've been, you're 12 years into your career. You've managed some pretty interesting transitions and have put forth some pretty big ideas. Let's go there. How, in general, how did you manage, getting away from being the guy, the network cowboy, to stitching things across a bigger team and getting it to work together?
Yeah. So when I took the leadership position, right, as being a director, I spent several months writing down, things that my past leadership had done, and I was basically putting them into columns, what I liked, what I didn't like, and then I spent a lot of time looking at myself over the past. At the time, I guess it was the past 9-ish years or so. And one of those things that came up was like, I never want someone in my team to be crying in a data center at 2 a.m. And so a lot of the stuff that we built in our team is really making sure that nobody has to go through that again, right? I went through it, sure, but I want to make sure nobody on my team has to go through that. And so a lot of the stuff is just a lot of the things that we do on our team and the things that we talk about are very team focused. It's a big thing for us to just stay true to ourselves, right? Like we're all a really tight team. We have a lot of chemistry, and so a big thing for managing all those transitions is just staying true to ourselves, right? Something that I've always said to myself to get past certain things, or like when I'm making big decisions, when I lay my head down at night, am I going to be happy with the decisions I made today? And so going through transitions like that, whether it's something simple in the team or it's a huge transition, like we're acquiring a company and we're adding new people, things like that. A lot of the time I just try to center myself, and my team centers themselves on just staying true to who we are.
Well, and you've taken that, and I don't think you've overly formalized it, but you operate on the idea of network community.
Right.
Tell me how you view network community, and what's the purpose of it?
Yeah, so we have several network groups or network departments in our company. We recently went through a lot of mergers and acquisitions. Around 7 companies were merged and acquired within, I think, about a year and a half. So we had all of these groups of network engineers that were basically doing their own thing, right? Nobody was talking to each other. Everybody was really siloed off into their previous responsibilities, like prior to the acquisition. So the goal of the network community was to intentionally erase boundaries between the groups. So everybody still had their primary responsibilities, but I wanted to open up conversations between the teams and share some of those responsibilities and like cross-train those guys so that, at any point in time, whether somebody's shadowing or we're short on people, or whether we're just trying to build team chemistry and, support other people in our company, we wanted to provide a space for that.
You talked me through a really specific example, like when you were in Amsterdam for Autocon 1, you probably justified the trip by being willing to do some maintenance work in the evenings there.
That's exactly how we did it. Yes,
exactly. And you called out, like, you have a roster and roles for everybody that was involved, and just you talk me through that using that data center maintenance as an example.
Sure. Yeah. The 2 main teams in our network community are the network infrastructure team, which is our NetOps team, and our network architecture team. I've been a leader in both of those teams, and so I'm very close to those teams. During the Amsterdam maintenance, we were replacing some network gear in our data center, and the makeup of the team was from the network community and not NetOps, not network architecture. We try to make sure that when we run projects, that the entire community gets visibility into it. So like you said, the makeup for the Amsterdam maintenance, I was remote hands. So senior director of network architecture was remote hands. We also had our network automation engineer as remote hands because we needed to go to Autocon. And our project lead for that one was our senior network architect. We run a buddy system, so our project backup for that was also a network architect. And then we run for every major maintenance, we have members monitoring the infrastructure. I mean, there are so many things for us to monitor during that, not just network focused, but everything within the infrastructure, because we have to do these upgrades with no downtime, right? So our project monitoring was done by NetOps engineers. So we had this mix of basically we start the project and say, hey, we have these roles to fill. Anyone in the network community is available to fill these roles. And so people just slot in where they are able to for that project. And that, gives exposure to new skills. It builds team chemistry. It gives us different perspectives when we go through project reviews. Somebody might be coming at it from an ops standpoint while somebody else is coming at it from an architecture standpoint, and blurring those boundaries between the team makes sure that at the end of the day, the right way to do it or the best way to do it is what wins.
Do you ever have trouble with slots not getting filled for a certain project?
Never. Everybody is eager to fill those slots. And, if anybody ever didn't want to, I would be jumping in to do it. I'm an engineer at heart. I came from that grind life that we talked about.
Yep.
But no, I've never had to do that. Everybody is always eager to be a part of those types of projects.
Leadership by example can be really powerful, right? I mean, I'm early in my career. One of my first directors at Bell Atlantic, for those of you who remember the art box, was a guy named Larry, and Larry was not afraid to come in and be there at 2 a.m. That was the only time we could really get maintenances on the network without having to do customer notifications. And he would be in there sitting on the floor, pulling cable, doing whatever, just like the rest of us. It was really pretty cool. So
leading from the front.
That's right. Yep. You've called out specific benefits of this, right? I think exposure to new skills, right? You talked about that. Tell me more about building team chemistry in that model.
Yeah. Team chemistry, which I think is one of the major points that I try to focus on in my role today. Team chemistry is everything for us. So these are people that not only are you spending 40 plus hours a week with these people, but when those emergencies happen and everything's on fire, I want to go into one of those fires with somebody that I know is going to be like shoulder to shoulder with me. Absolutely. Right in there. I want to be fighting them for who is going to fix the problem, right? Like I don't want to go in with somebody who's like, "Oh no, you go first." So building team chemistry is a major aspect of my job today, and something that I hammer with the team almost daily. They call it me getting on my soapbox, but I think it's one of those necessary things, right? Like they've told me they respect that, like that has to happen. And it's my responsibility to make sure that everybody enjoys who they're working with. And like I said, when things go bad, you want somebody that's going to be shoulder to shoulder with you.
It's really hard to engineer chemistry between individuals and on a team. What are some things you do to help facilitate that?
I get really cheesy with the group. So we have some military guys, and they have a lot of like military isms, I guess I'd call them.
Sure.
Yeah, so we'll always I make sure everybody's comfortable with sharing emotions and being vulnerable. That's a big one that we talk about, is make sure when you're presenting a project to the team, it's okay to receive criticism on the project. I mean, I have been the leader on a project in front of everyone on our team in our network community. We have roughly 20 people in the network community right now. And I have led a project review and just been torn to shreds on my plan of action, right? My mop, whatever you want to call it. Sure. I've had them tell me every single line, like, "Oh, no, I don't think you should do that." Or, I missed a step, and they're like, "Oh, no, you missed that." And knowing that and reminding the team that that is an environment where if you are vulnerable, you will learn things from everyone else. And if that criticism comes from a point of them trying to help, not them trying to tear you down, I think that just adds a ton of fuel to that team chemistry fire, if you will, to make sure that everybody is contributing. And that becomes a positive feedback loop. As people get more confident with the team and more comfortable with the team, they'll open up more to the team, and it just keeps going and building itself.
A quick interruption to tell you about Autocon 2, the third in the Autocon conference series about network automation. Only, don't think of Autocon as a typical conference. Instead, Autocon is a gathering of the networking industry to work towards a standardized approach to network automation. And this is a hard problem. Equipment vendors have a vested interest in selling you their automation tools, but let me guess, you're a multi-vendor shop. There are so many open source tools you could bring into your automation stack that it can be overwhelming. And if you want to integrate with products like ServiceNow, that is an added complexity. If you've tried moving from simple Python scripts to a robust automation system the business can rely on, you know what I'm getting at. And this is why the Network Automation Forum exists, why the Autocon conference series exists, and why you should attend Autocon 2 in real time in Denver, November 20th through 22nd, 2024. Hear the talks, interact with the speakers, talk to other attendees in the hallway track, meet the people making automation tools, talk to vendor experts who live and breathe this stuff. You're going to leave with solid ideas about how to approach network automation for your company, ideas that will impact the business that you support in a very positive way. Register at networkautomation.forum/Autocon2. And I don't mean to sound dramatic, but don't wait, because this event is almost certainly going to sell out and the venue only holds so many humans. There really is a ticket cap. Again, that's networkautomation.forum/Autocon2, and I hope to see you in Denver. And now, back to the podcast.
Yeah. Again, really, really hard to engineer, but really, really fortunate when it comes together. And I think you got some necessary ingredients to help facilitate that for sure. Let me switch gears a little bit on you. You mentioned earlier, 7 acquired companies within the span of 18 months. Lots of network integration and team integration to do there. And let me couple that with some comments that you've made about automation as an enabler to get everybody on the same page, and kind of doing your self-assessment when you went to the first Autocon event last year.
Yeah, when we bring people onto the team, I don't want to have to reteach everyone from step one what we need to be doing. I mean, we're bringing on high-level engineers, or people that know what they're doing. Some of these guys most of these guys are older than me, and so a lot of the things that we're trying to accomplish with automation is not just standardization for what we're doing and making sure that our day-to-day work stays at a high quality, but a lot of this stuff makes the onboarding side of things easier, right? If we are able to bring on engineers and show them automation, it kind of gives them a different viewpoint of the architecture, kind of zooms out and lets them see all the pieces at once, rather than that zoomed in pushing a config view where you're in a switch and you're pushing that config and then you got to hop to the next device. When we show them the automation, we can kind of show them the big picture, and it really ramps up their understanding of the environment and reduces that period where they're unsure of what everything looks like. It just fast tracks them into getting on a first name basis with the network infrastructure.
You also said something about your relative rate of adoption of automation. I think you were surprised at the first Autocon event with how you were doing, from a corporate perspective compared to the rest of the community. Do I remember that right?
Yeah. That was one of our big goals, really, to the first Autocon. I mean, we didn't really know what to expect as far as the presentations went, and I didn't show my presentation to the team, so they were excited to see that as well. But one of the big things we wanted to do was benchmark ourselves against everyone else that was in attendance, and we found ourselves to be way ahead of the curve, which briefly made us feel really good about what we're doing, but immediately made us want to further the gap, right? Like, we came back from Autocon 0 and promoted our first network automation engineer. So he's a dedicated network automation engineer now. We just really wanted to continue being ahead of the curve and being at the front of it all.
That's cool to see an impact like that, for sure. With other benefits of automation, like, do you rely heavily on automated documentation? Does that help with onboarding too? Beyond just configs, like, what do you do from a doc generation perspective?
Yeah, a lot of our documentation automation specific is built into the automation, but I would say that our non-automation documentation is still in the manual dark ages. So I would
Gotcha.
be open to hearing how anybody does that for sure.
We will definitely dig into that in future episodes. We've already got some great individuals lined up that can talk to things like that from a DevOps and net DevOps pipeline approach where documentation is generated automatically. So yeah,
That's
I'll
awesome.
flag that for follow up for you. So in terms of core principles, you talked about really being focused on everything fitting into a process. And you should know the outcome of any given event before anyone ever touches it. That's a pretty bold statement. Tell me more, talk more to that.
Yeah, so to call back to Autocon again, at Autocon 1, my presentation was a lot about Toyota Kata and how that process works of knowing the end goal and then taking it step by step, right? You take the first step, you complete it, you look around and see what you've done, and then you assess and take the next step, right? So, I mean, really, yeah, you should know the outcome before anyone ever touches it. It ties into that message of I know the end goal and the path might vary based on what we're doing. A deployment is going to be different than an upgrade, is going to be different than troubleshooting, but I want to know the end goal. And as long as we make it to that end goal and we document the steps that we took there for future issues, the outcome should always be the same. I mean, I might present a problem to the team and we might have 5 different ways of doing it, but the outcome ended up being the same. And that's
Sure.
what I'm concerned on with the team, is that the outcome is always the same. So yeah, I think that when a task hits our team, even though the path to the outcome might vary, I think the outcome should be the same every time.
You certainly must have some exception handling, right? Because there is that fraction of time where, wait a minute, this didn't happen the way I thought. Could be because of a hardware fault, could be a dependency on some other piece of the team or external to the org. But how does exception handling work for you in that frame of mind?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I trust all of our engineers, right? So that's a huge part of what we're talking about here is if I can specify the end goal and then have full trust in my engineers to get there safely, that's the only way that works. So of course there are exception handling. I mean, I went to do normal firewall upgrades recently and I bricked one of them. And when I called the vendor, they said, "Oh yeah, that happens sometimes." So I mean, anything can happen, but ultimately I made it to the outcome of getting the firewalls upgraded, right? That's kind of the give and take of it, is that you can't run that type of process or you can't have that type of expectation on your team unless you trust your team and you enable your team to do those things.
And for the record, so clearly you have learned what a firewall is now.
I have learned what a firewall is.
Excellent.
Yes, I'm maybe on the other side of it where I know more than I ever expected about firewalls.
Well, so that brings us back to your focus on team culture and particularly career development for folks on the team. You've talked about wanting healthy competition on the team. What does that look like for you, and how do you encourage it and manage it?
Yeah, our guys are and girl. I have to get away from saying guys. We have men and women on our team. Our team is constantly competing against each other. It's just I like to hire people that are hungry, right?
Sure.
Something that I always look for is people that came from hard backgrounds. So like
Sure.
myself,
Right.
it's something that gets ingrained in them. Something I can't teach. I can teach networking to anybody, but
Right.
that like internal motivation and that drive, that's something that I look for when we're expanding the team. So that healthy competition kind of comes naturally to everybody, but it takes a lot of heart to hearts, or like I said, Garrett soapbox moments to get there. And so it's just constantly reminding the team that this is a safe environment. Everybody here is on the same page, and that when we're working together, it's okay to be eager to beat your teammate at something, but not in a sense where you're leaving them behind. One of those militarisms that we talk about is rising tides raise all ships.
Sure.
And that's something that we take very serious on the team. I think I remind the team weekly of things like that. And if you're excelling at something, but you're leaving somebody behind, then you're not working with our team. That's not how we operate. And so that healthy competition is encouraged, and everybody knows the boundaries of what that competition looks like.
So you have some kind of mix and balance of that healthy competition, but also working as a team and helping each other. And you've told me all your engineers are judged based on how well they help their teammates. How do you assess this? How do you measure it? How do you encourage it?
Yeah, we get constant feedback from everyone on the team. I do feedback personally with everybody in our one-on-ones. I ask how they're working with the team. Has anything come up recently that you want to call out, whether it was good or bad? We also do group feedback. So we take a ton of time in preparing our projects, and then we take time after our projects where we get together and we say, hey, this worked well, this didn't work well. Let's get feedback for the next project. And that feedback range is very wide. It can be anything from, hey man, you were on site and your mic sounded bad, so we need to make sure we get you a new headset. Or it could be, hey, I didn't like how, we hit that issue and everybody started talking over me. Or it could just be a process change on how we do an upgrade to something. I mean, the feedback, I drive that conversation because that's, again, one of the most important things to us as a team, because if we don't grow and we don't get that feedback, then it's just more of the same, right? Everybody on our team wants to be growing. Everybody on our team wants to be getting better. So it's constant oversight, not micromanagement.
That again, good balance to strike. Are you hiring? Because I think people listening to this might this sounds like a place where people might want to send you a resume. We'll get to your contact info by the end of the episode here.
I'm not hiring right now. No, I'm
okay. Sorry to put you on the spot on that. So, yeah, it sounds like, to use another military term, after action reviews. Sounds like every project has an after action review.
Exactly.
And I certainly can relate to that, making the team a safe space for people to ask questions. I remember really early in my career, there was this general attitude of, boy, you asked the wrong question, somebody's going to rip you a new one. Mm-hmm. Right. And it takes concerted effort to make sure that people aren't going to be penalized for asking questions and being open about things, but at least doing some level of homework. Read the fine manual at least a little bit, right?
Yeah, we talked about crying on the floor in the data center.
Right.
One of the other things was, back when we were in the NOC, there were two high-level architects. So our entire tech team was 5 or 6 people. And they were in a separate office from us. And so we would walk across the hall and ask them questions. And, we would stick our head in and ask a question and hope we didn't get like a shoe thrown at us or something. It was that environment of like, yeah, they might have been joking, but on the flip side, there was a little truth to that shoe coming at your face. And so something that I wanted to incorporate in the team is, not only will you not cry alone in a data center, but I don't want shoes thrown at anybody when they're asking questions.
Right. It sounds to me like, I hear you talking about, you really engage technically. You know the tooling, you still can go in and configure devices, et cetera, but you also have an incredible volume of responsibility in terms of one-on-one discussions, getting feedback, managing all that. How do you manage it all?
Well, probably the most frequent feedback I get is that I need to get my hands off the keyboard. So I'm still battling that one. I don't know if I have an answer for that one. I can't help but get in there sometimes and do it. I think a lot of it is just it's really, I think I'm good at it, and it's fun to be doing something that you're good at. There's a lot of mutual respect with the team. Like I don't see them as my employees. I see us all as equals on a team with just different responsibilities, right? So our architects have certain responsibilities, our operations engineers have certain responsibilities, and I'm just one of the guys on the team that has a responsibility. My responsibility is just a little different in that I have to build team chemistry and maintain it and make sure everyone's happy. I have to run projects and do budgeting and things like that. I think there's just a lot of mutual respect, and it makes it easy to do those things when everybody on the team is in that like kumbaya state. And I don't know. Some of it comes naturally, I think. And again, like I said, I think I'm good at it, but I don't really have like a cookie cutter answer for it. It's one of those things that takes constant work. Like
Right.
if you were to log in as a network engineer and you got an alert from your alerting system and you go in and you deal with that. I mean, it's one of those things like if I've got a second, I'm going to call one of my guys and see how they're doing. It's just a constant thing of like every day. It's not something that you can just wham bam slap it on your team and everything is good. Like it's something that you have to constantly work at.
Right. I can see, on one hand, the leadership example, leading by doing, you want to create an environment where everybody's willing and even competitive to be the person who goes and gets X done, right? And you're still participating in that. Do you ever get the sense that maybe you participating in that too much takes away opportunities for people on your team to grow?
Yeah. I love that you brought that up, and I'm kind of going to go off on a little tangent here.
It's okay.
Uh, One of the things that I do when I bring people onto the team is they go through an initial questionnaire. And so it's kind of probably half the time I get an eye roll when I say, I'm going to send you a questionnaire and I want you to fill it out. And it's a getting to know you thing. But I send the same questionnaire out to everyone. So I've been sending that questionnaire out for 2 or 3 years to everybody that's joined our team. And one of my favorite questions on there is, what do you hope I do as a leader? And I had an initial round of those where when my team first was stood up, we had about 4 of us. So I took every response to that and I printed it out on a piece of paper. It's been up on my wall for the past 2 or 3 years. And one of the really cool things about that is that everybody has said pretty much the same thing to all of those types of questions. Another one of those questions on there is, what do you hope to be seen as within the community? And of the, I don't know, 20 or 30 questionnaires, everyone has put the exact same answer to that question. And it was, they want to be seen as somebody that the team can go to for answers. So the first half of that is everybody, when they come onto the team, is in that same mindset. And I don't think that's unique to our team because remember, these are initial questionnaires. I've done zero work at this point with that person.
Sure.
So I think everybody wants to be seen as that person that can be the go-to for that. And being in my position, I have to constantly remind myself to step out of the technical role, like you said, and make sure that I'm fostering that environment for people so that they can grow and they can do that. I do fight with myself sometimes on it. And like I said, I get constant feedback from the team of, hey, Garrett, get your hands off the keyboard and let me do that. You've got other things to do. And it's true. And I welcome that feedback, right? Like that's not my responsibility these days. So I think it's just having that open environment where people are allowed to look at me as another one of the guys and they're allowed to tell me, hey man, back off. That's something that I'm working on. I think that's the way I do it.
Yeah, that's important. I've modeled something similar where whenever I've onboarded someone onto my team, we even, beyond first level reporting, you need to be comfortable telling me that I'm wrong.
Yep.
I would prefer that it not be in a big group meeting or in a reply all email. If you have to do it that way, you can, but you need to be comfortable to tell me if you really think I'm not approaching something right, or I'm just dead wrong about something. So
Agreed.
that's a great nugget. The onboarding surveys, that's a great idea. As we start to wind down here, let me just ask you a couple fun questions.
Okay.
Give me your personal story of an outage that you caused.
Yeah, I think this is my most recent outage. So I did this maybe a year ago, and I think the lesson here was I need to step back off the keyboard, right? I did we were manipulating our BGP routes in one of our data centers, and I withdrew some routes. And unfortunately, I withdrew a prefix that was my management prefix, and I
Oops.
lost connectivity to the entire environment. And I immediately called somebody on the team. Like I said, we run a buddy system, so nobody goes it alone. So first thing I did was I said, "Well," and I called one of our network architects, and we ended up power cycling the device, and it reverted the config. But I got hit by that hero mentality again, right? Like, we don't go into maintenances by ourselves, but that night I was just defaulting back to that hero mentality when I should have had a buddy. And yeah, we got it up pretty quick, but those constant reminders, I guess, where I got bit by the hero mentality popped up again.
It's always there, always lurking, ready to take back over. We must spend a lifetime suppressing the urge. But I know maintenance windows don't happen the way they used to happen anymore. But you want to call it any good, really good maintenance window music you used to use?
Yeah, sure. My lame answer is that we don't run maintenance windows alone anymore. So we're always on a conference call, so there's never any music. But back in the hero days, it just needs to be really loud and screaming at me constantly. I think that's the best way to describe that genre. But like, look up the band Johnny Booth, for example, and you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about.
I did. It gave me a headache right before the recording.
There you go.
No,
That's it.
It did not. It did not. But a little window into the personality behind the mic here. So very good. Well, look, what's next for NetOps? What do you think we should be talking about that we haven't mentioned here? Or who else should we be talking to get different perspectives?
Yeah, I think a lot of your other guests are probably going to hammer on like tech and tools and things like that. But I know we've talked about it a bit, but I just want to kind of like beat the dead horse of like your team matters. I think that's something that gets overlooked in ops. And there's a lot of churn in ops. And I think that if you, as a leader, in a leadership position, but even in engineering positions, you can foster this to an extent.
Right.
If you focus on teamwork and you place the team on a level that you do with your tech and your tools, like you really commit resources to making your team more cohesive and building that relationship between your team members, going into the churn type things that happen in operations are a lot more palatable when you're doing it next to somebody you really like, right?
Sure.
And I'm not asking everybody to be best friends and like go to each other's weddings and things like that. But
Right.
If you build that relationship with people, a lot of that, the bad stuff that happens in ops, those late nights or when you're working the whole weekend and you miss a birthday or something, like those become a lot more manageable when you're doing it with somebody else and somebody else is in it with you.
Have you ever taken a look at what kind of an impact that has on retention? Because you said it, right? Ops teams, there's a lot of churn. People like to graduate from ops.
It's anecdotal for sure, but in the 2 to 3 years that I've been a leader of our NetOps team, our network architecture team, one of the main people in the network community that drives that, I haven't had anybody quit. So I have seen a ton of churn prior to that. I've had people come in and I've taught them from an engineering perspective and then they've quit. And, I've been in all that. But, placing the focus on the team has yet to have any negative outcomes from where I'm sitting right now.
Well, the team is important. That's been a great point to drive home. I'm sure others will take that away from this conversation. I really appreciate your time here today. And it's good to get to know you a little better. Look forward to doing even more. How should people get a hold of you, Garrett? What do you prefer?
LinkedIn is probably the best way. I'm not a huge social media guy. Like I'm not on Facebook and Instagram and all that, but LinkedIn is nice, especially since I've been stepping out into the community and I've had people reach out to me after Autocon presentations and things like that. So I'm trying to do better at keeping an eye on my LinkedIn. I think that's the best way to reach me.
Cool. We'll make sure people look for that. Well, thanks for the conversation, Garrett, and thanks to everyone else for tuning in to Total Network Operations. TNOps is a growing project, and we'd love your feedback. What you liked, what you didn't like, topics you'd like us to cover, people you'd like to hear on the show. You can also hit me on LinkedIn, drop me a DM, or you can send us a follow-up at packetpushers.net/FU, which of course is for follow-up. We'll see you all next time on TNOps.